My name is Kevin T. Hobbs, and I am an actor, filmmaker, and teaching artist that hails from Central Illinois. I am the founder and executive director of DOSE Foundation, headquartered in Urbana, Illinois. DOSE, Dreams Orchestrated Simply by Effort. And the mission of DOSE Foundation is to ensure that the theater community becomes a better mirror of the world that we live. And we accomplish this by beginning education initiatives that connect to the local school system here and providing other opportunities for individuals from marginalized communities to come and learn about the art of theater, both on stage and backstage. My mission is equality at the heart and soul of everything that I do. And I would like to say thank you to Carol Inskeep and the fine people at the Urbana Free Public Library and the Urbana Public Arts, and also where we are right now, the Independent Media Center in Champaign-Urbana, otherwise known as the IMC. I hope you enjoy what it is that we're offering you with these readings of James Baldwin, my favorite author, and someone whose prophetic words not only indict, but also heal and soothe. An impassioned essayist and novelist, James Baldwin wrote with extreme urgency about the trials and tribulations of Black life in America. Born in 1924, Baldwin grew up in a lowly New York City tenement in the Black district of Harlem. He became a storefront preacher at the age of 14, but discovered while working on his school newspaper that he wanted to be a writer instead. Upon graduating from high school in 1942, he accepted a variety of menial jobs while attempting to launch a successful literary career as a hard-hitting journalist and storyteller. In 1948, after publishing several controversial articles about racism in America, Baldwin elected to leave the country altogether and live in Europe. There he finished his first novel, the largely autobiographical Go Tell It on the Mountain, which offers a jarring look at Black ghetto life. The book established him as a major author when it was published in 1953. Baldwin wrote other popular novels in subsequent years, among them Giovanni's Room and Another Country. Yet he became known as much for his fiery essays on race relations as for his works of fiction. In books such as Notes of a Native Son and The Fire Next Time, he wrote so incisively about the civil rights movement and the relationship between blacks and whites in American society that ghetto dwellers and politicians alike came to regard him as a leading spokesman on racial affairs. Indeed, no other writer has pleaded more passionately to make America what America must become than James Baldwin. My heart is heavier tonight than it has ever been before. I raise my voice to you tonight out of a sorrow and a wonder I've never felt before. Not only I, my Lord, am in this case. Everyone under the sound of my voice, and many more souls than that, feel as I feel, and tremble as I tremble, and bleed as I bleed. It is not that the days are dark. We have known dark days. It is not only that the blood runs down and no man helps us. It is not only that our children are destroyed before our eyes. It is not only that our lives from day to day and every hour of each day are menaced by the people among whom you have set us down. We have borne all these things, my Lord, and we have done what the prophets of old could not do. We have sung the Lord's song in a strange land, in a strange land. What was the sin committed by our forefathers in the time that has vanished on the other side of the flood, which has had to be expiated by chains, by the lash, by hunger and thirst, by slaughter, by fire, by the rope, by the knife, and for so many generations on these wild shores in this strange land? Our offense must have been mighty, our crime immeasurable. But it is not the past which makes our hearts so heavy. It is the present. Lord, where is our hope? Who or what shall touch the hearts of this headlong and unthinking people and turn them back from destruction? When will they hear the words of John? I know thy works, that thou art neither cold nor hot. I would that thou wert cold or hot. So then, because thou art lukewarm and neither cold nor hot, I will spew thee out of my mouth. Because thou sayest, I am rich and increased with goods, and have need of nothing, and knowest not that thou art wretched and miserable and poor and blind and naked. Now, when the children come, my Lord, and ask which road to follow, my tongue stammers and my heart fails. I will not abandon the land, the strange land, which is my home. But can I ask the children forever to sustain the cruelty inflicted on them by those who have been their masters and who are now in very truth their kinfolk, their brothers and their sisters and their parents? What hope is there for people who deny their deeds and disown their kinsmen, and who do so in the name of purity and love in the name of Jesus Christ? What a light, my Lord, is needed to conquer so mighty a darkness. This darkness rules in us and grows in black and white alike. I have set my face against the darkness. I will not let it conquer me, even though it will, I know, one day destroy this body. But my Lord, what of the children? What shall I tell the children? I must be with you, Lord, like Jacob, and wrestle with you until the light appears. I will not let you go until you give me a sign that in the terrible Sahara of our time, a fountain may spring, the fountain of a true morality, and bring us closer, O my Lord, to that peace on earth desired by so few throughout so many ages. Let not our suffering endure forever. Teach us to trust the great gift of life and learn to love one another and dare to walk the earth like men. Amen. Many thousands gone. It is only in his music, which Americans are able to admire because a protective sentimentality limits their understanding of it, that the Negro in America has been able to tell his story. It is a story which otherwise has yet to be told and which no American is prepared to hear. As is the inevitable result of things unsaid, we find ourselves until today oppressed with a dangerous and reverberating silence. And the story is told compulsively, in symbols and signs, in hieroglyphics. It is revealed in Negro speech, and in that of the white majority, and in their different frames of reference. The ways in which the Negro has affected the American psychology are betrayed in our popular culture and in our morality. And our estrangement from him is the depth of our estrangement from ourselves. We cannot ask, what do we really feel about him? Such a question merely opens the gates on chaos. What we really feel about him is involved with all that we feel about everything, about everyone, about ourselves. The story of the Negro in America is the story of America, or more precisely, it is the story of Americans. It is not a very pretty story. The story of a people is never very pretty. The Negro in America, gloomily referred to as the shadow which lies athwart our national life, is far more than that. He is a series of shadows, self-created, intertwining, which now we helplessly battle. One may say that the Negro in America does not really exist except in the darkness of our minds. This is why his history and his progress, his relationship to all other Americans, has been kept in the social arena. He is a social and not a personal or a human problem. To think of him is to think of statistics, slums, rapes, injustices, remote violence. It is to be confronted with an endless cataloging of losses, gains, skirmishes. It is to feel virtuous, outraged, helpless, as though his continuing status among us was somehow analogous to disease, cancer, perhaps, or tuberculosis, which must be checked, even though it cannot be cured. In this arena, the black man acquires quite another aspect from that which he has in life. We do not know what to do with him in life. If he breaks our sociological and sentimental image of him, we are panic-stricken and we feel ourselves betrayed. When he violates this image, therefore, he stands in the greatest danger, sensing which we uneasily suspect that he is very often playing a part for our benefit. And what is not always so apparent, but is equally true, we are then in some danger ourselves, hence our retreat or our blind and immediate retaliation. Our dehumanization of the Negro then is indivisible from our dehumanization of ourselves. The loss of our own identity is the price we pay for our annulment of his. Time and our own force act as our allies, creating an impossible, a fruitless tension between the traditional master and slave. Impossible and fruitless because literal and visible as this tension has become, it has nothing to do with reality. Time has made some changes in the Negro face. Nothing has succeeded in making it exactly like our own, though the general desire seems to make it blank if one cannot make it white. When it has become blank, the past as thoroughly washed from the black face as it has been from ours, our guilt will be finished. At least it will have ceased to be visible, which we imagine to be much the same thing. But, paradoxically, it is we who prevent this from happening, since it is we who, every hour that we live, reinvest the black face with our guilt, and we do this by a further paradox, no less ferocious, helplessly, passionately, out of an unrealized need to suffer absolution. Today, to be sure, we know that the Negro is not biologically or mentally inferior. There is no truth in those rumors of his body odor or his incorrigible sexuality, or no more truth than can be easily explained or even defended by the social sciences. Yet, in our most recent war, his blood was segregated, as was for the most part his person. Up to today, we are set at a division, so that he may not marry our daughters or our sisters, nor may he, for the most part, eat at our tables or live in our houses. Moreover, those who do so at the grave expense of a double alienation from their own people, whose fabled attributes they must either deny or, worse, cheapen and bring to market from us, for we require of them, when we accept them, that they at once cease to be Negroes and yet not fail to remember what being a Negro means. To remember, that is, what it means to be us. The threshold of insult is higher or lower, according to the people involved, from the bootblack in Atlanta to the celebrity in New York. One must travel very far among saints with nothing to gain, or outcasts with nothing to lose, to find a place where it does not matter, and perhaps a word or a gesture or simply a silence will testify that it matters even there. For it means something to be a Negro, after all, as it means something to have been born in Ireland or in China, to live where one sees space and sky, or to live where one sees nothing but rubble or nothing but high buildings. We cannot escape our origins, however hard we try, these origins which contain the key, could we but find it, to all that we later become. What it means to be a Negro is a good deal more than this essay can discover. What it means to be a Negro in America can perhaps be suggested by an examination of the myths we perpetuate about him. Aunt Jemima and Uncle Tom are dead. Their places taken by a group of amazingly well-adjusted young men and women, almost as dark, but ferociously literate, well-dressed and scrubbed, who are never laughed at, who are not likely ever to set foot in a cotton or tobacco field or in any but the most modern of kitchens. There are others who remain, in our odd idiom, underprivileged. Some are bitter, and these come to grief. Some are unhappy, but continually presented with the evidence of a better day soon to come, are speedily becoming less so. Most of them care nothing whatever about race. They want only their proper place in the sun and the right to be left alone, like any other citizen of the Republic. We may all breathe more easily. Before, however, our joy at the demise of Aunt Jemima and Uncle Tom approaches the indecent, we had better ask whence they spring, how they lived, into what limbo have they vanished. However inaccurate our portraits of them were, these portraits do suggest not only the conditions, but the quality of their lives and the impact of this spectacle on our consciences. There was no one more forbearing than Aunt Jemima. No one stronger or more pious or more loyal or more wise. There was at the same time no one weaker or more faithless or more vicious, and certainly no one more immoral. Uncle Tom, trustworthy and sexless, needed only to drop the title uncle to become violent, crafty, and sullen, a menace to any white woman who passed by. They prepared our feast tables and our burial clothes, and if we could boast that we understood them, it was far more to the point and far more true that they understood us. They were, moreover, the only people in the world who did. And not only did they know us better than we knew ourselves, but they knew us better than we knew them. This was the piquant flavoring to the national joke. It lay behind our uneasiness as it lay behind our benevolence. Aunt Jemima and Uncle Tom, our creations, at the last evaded us. They had a life, their own, perhaps a better life than ours, and they would never tell us what it was. At the point where we were driven most privately and painfully to conjecture what depths of contempt, what heights of indifference, what prodigious of resilience, what untamable superiority allowed them so vividly to endure, neither perishing nor rising up in a body to wipe us from the earth, the image perpetually shattered and the word failed. The black man in our midst carried murder in his heart. He wanted vengeance. We carried murder too. We wanted peace. In our image of the Negro breathes the past we deny, not dead, but living yet and powerful, the beast in our jungle of statistics. It is this which defeats us, which continues to defeat us, which lends to interracial cocktail parties, their rattling, genteel, nervously smiling air. In any drawing room at such a gathering the beast may spring, filling the air with flying things and an unlightening wailing. Wherever the problem touches, there is confusion, there is danger. Wherever the Negro face appears, a tension is created, the tension of a silence filled with things unutterable. It is a sentimental error, therefore, to believe that the past is dead. It means nothing to say that it is all forgotten, that the Negro himself has forgotten it. It is not a question of memory. Oedipus did not remember the thongs that bound his feet. Nevertheless, the marks they left testified to that doom toward which his feet were leading him. The man does not remember the hand that struck him, the darkness that frightened him as a child. Nevertheless, the hand and the darkness remained with him, indivisible from himself forever, part of the passion that drives him wherever he thinks to take flight. The giver for Burtis. If the hope of giving is to love the living, the giver risks madness in the act of giving. Some such lessons I seemed to see in the faces that surrounded me. Needy and blind, unhopeful, unlifted, what gift would give them the gift to be gifted? The giver is no less adrift than those who are clamoring for the gift. If they cannot claim it, if it is not there, if their empty fingers beat the empty air, and the giver goes down on his knees in prayer, knows that all of his giving has been for naught, and that nothing was ever what he thought, and turns in his guilty bed to stare at the starving multitude standing there, and rises from bed to curse at heaven, he must yet understand that to whom much is given, much will be taken, and justly so. I cannot tell how much I owe. Guilt, desire, and love. At the dark street corner, where guilt and desire are attempting to stare each other down, presently one of them will light a cigarette and glance in the direction of the abandoned warehouse. Love came slouching along, an exploded silence, standing a little apart but visible anyway, in the yellow, silent, steaming light, while guilt and desire wrangled, trying not to be overheard by this trespasser. Each time desire looked towards love, hoping to find a witness, guilt shouted louder and shook them hips, and the fire of the cigarette threatened to burn the warehouse down. Desire actually started across the street, time after time, to hear what love might have to say. But guilt flagged down a truckload of other people and knelt down in the middle of the street, and while the truckload of other people looked away and swore that they didn't see nothing and couldn't testify no how, and love moved out of sight, guilt accomplished upon the standing body of desire the momentary inflammatory soothing which seals their union forever and creates a mighty traffic problem. (4A). Sitting in the house with everything on my mind, stumbling in my house, watching my lover go stone blind. Come back from that window. Please don't open that door. I know where it leads. It leads to hell and more than your blinded eyes can see. Come back and try to lean on me. I'm here. I've gone nowhere away. If only you could see. How is it we have traveled, you and me, through happy days and torment, and not guess that we could find ourselves so black, unblessed, so far apart? You are my heart. I watched you sleep and watched you play. I slapped your buttocks every day. I used to laugh with you when you laughed and stand, when you stood up, and with you watched the land drop down beneath us, green and brown and crooked, as we rose up into a sky, which we alone had found, and where we were alone. Too much alone, perhaps. Perhaps we were as wicked as people said, turning to each other for the living bread. And now I have taken your hope away, you say, and you think of me sometimes as the most monstrous of old men. No matter, if I could only make you see how you must live when you are far away from me. If only I could see for you, if I could for your spell the vast contours of hell. If I could tell you how on such a road where I walked once, I stumbled and fell and howled, how you must walk the road and not be driven into the great wilderness by some false dream of heaven. I have been there and I know, but I know too that nothing I say now will get to you. You have your journey now and I have mine, and all day and all night long I have waited for a sign, which will not be given to us now. Love. Love has no gifts to give, except the revelation that the soul can live. On a coming day, you will hear from afar, I, your lover, pray. You will hear then the prayer that you cannot hear now. And when you hear that sobbing, boy, rejoice, and know that love is the purpose of the human voice. My dungeon shook. Letter to my nephew on the 100th anniversary of the Emancipation. Dear James, I have begun this letter 5 times and torn it up 5 times. I keep seeing your face, which is also the face of your father and my brother. Like him, you are tough, dark, vulnerable, moody, with a very definite tendency to sound truculent because you want no one to think you are soft. You may be like your grandfather in this. I don't know. But certainly both you and your father resemble him very much physically. Well, he is dead. He never saw you, and he had a terrible life. He was defeated long before he died because at the bottom of his heart, he really believed what white people said about him. This is one of the reasons that he became so holy. I am sure that your father has told you something about all that. Neither you nor your father exhibit any tendency towards holiness. You really are of another era, part of what happened when the Negro left the land and came into what the late E. Franklin Frazier called the cities of destruction. You can only be destroyed by believing that you really are what the white world calls a nigger. I tell you this because I love you, and please don't you ever forget it. I have known both of you all your lives, have carried your daddy in my arms and on my shoulders, kissed and spanked him and watched him learn to walk. I don't know if you've known anybody from that far back, if you've loved anybody that long, first as an infant, then as a child, then as a man. You gain a strange perspective on time and human pain and effort. Other people cannot see what I see whenever I look into your father's face. For behind your father's face, as it is today, are all those other faces which were his. Let him laugh, and I see a cellar your father does not remember, and a house he does not remember. And I hear in his present laughter his laughter as a child. Let him curse, and I remember him falling down the cellar steps and howling. And I remember with pain his tears, which my hand or your grandmother so easily wiped away. But no one's hand can wipe away those tears he sheds invisibly today, which one hears in his laughter and in his speech and in his songs. I know what the world has done to my brother and how narrowly he has survived it. And I know, which is much worse, and this is the crime of which I accuse my country and my countrymen, and for which neither I nor time nor history will ever forgive them, that they have destroyed and are destroying hundreds of thousands of lives, and do not know it and do not want to know it. One can be, indeed one must strive to become tough and philosophical concerning destruction and death, for this is what most of mankind has been best at since we have heard of man. But remember, most of mankind is not all of mankind. But it is not permissible that the authors of devastation should also be innocent. It is the innocence which constitutes the crime. Now, my dear namesake, these innocent and well-meaning people, your countrymen, have caused you to be born under conditions not very far removed from those described for us by Charles Dickens in the London of more than 100 years ago. I hear the chorus of the innocent screaming, "No, this is not true. How bitter you are." But I am writing this letter to you to try to tell you something about how to handle them, for most of them do not yet really know that you exist. I know the conditions under which you were born, for I was there. Your countrymen were not there and haven't made it yet. Your grandmother was also there, and no one has ever accused her of being bitter. I suggest that the innocents check with her. She isn't hard to find. Your countrymen don't know that she exists either, though she has been working for them all their lives. Well, you were born. Here you came, something like 15 years ago. And though your father and mother and grandmother, looking about the streets through which they were carrying you, staring at the walls into which they brought you, had every reason to be heavy-hearted, yet they were not. For here you were, Big James, named for me. You were a big baby. I was not. Here you were, to be loved. To be loved, baby, hard at once and forever, to strengthen you against the loveless world. Remember that. I know how black it looks today for you. It looked bad that day too. Yes, we were trembling. We have not stopped trembling yet, but if we had not loved each other, none of us would have survived. And now you must survive because we love you, and for the sake of your children and your children's children. This innocent country set you down in a ghetto in which, in fact, it intended that you should perish. Let me spell out precisely what I mean by that, for the heart of the matter is here, and the root of my dispute with my country. You were born where you were born and faced the future that you faced because you were black and for no other reason. The limits of your ambition were thus expected to be set forever. You were born into a society which spelled out with brutal clarity in as many ways as possible that you were a worthless human being. You were not expected to aspire to excellence. You were not expected to make peace with mediocrity. Wherever you have turned, James, in your short time on this earth, you have been told where you could go and what you could do, and how you could do it, and where you could live and whom you could marry. I know your countrymen do not agree with me about this, and I hear them saying, "You exaggerate. They do not know Harlem, and I do. So do you. Take no one's word for anything, including mine, but trust your experience. Know whence you came. If you know whence you came, there is really no limit to where you can go. The details and symbols of your life have been deliberately constructed to make you believe what white people say about you. Please try to remember that what they believe, as well as what they do and cause you to endure, does not testify to your inferiority, but to their inhumanity and fear. Please try to be clear, dear James, through the storm which rages about your youthful head today, about the reality which lies behind the words acceptance and integration. There is no reason for you to try to become like white people, and there is no basis whatever for their impertinent assumption that they must accept you. The really terrible thing, old buddy, is that you must accept them. And I mean that very seriously. You must accept them and accept them with love. For these innocent people have no other hope. They are, in effect, still trapped in a history which they do not understand. And until they understand it, they cannot be released from it. They have had to believe for many years and for innumerable reasons that black men are inferior to white men. Many of them, indeed, know better. But as you will discover, people find it very difficult to act on what they know. To act is to be committed, and to be committed is to be in danger. In this case, the danger, in the minds of most white Americans, is the loss of their identity. Try to imagine how you would feel if you woke up one morning to find the sun shining and all the stars aflame. You would be frightened because it is out of the order of nature. Any upheaval in the universe is terrifying because it so profoundly attacks one's sense of one's own reality. Well, the black man has functioned in the white man's world as a fixed star and as an immovable pillar. And as he moves out of his place, heaven and earth are shaken to their foundations. You, don't be afraid. I said that it was intended that you should perish in the ghetto. Perish by never being allowed to go behind the white man's definitions, by never being allowed to spell your proper name. You have, and many of us have, defeated this intention. And by a terrible law, a terrible paradox, those innocents who believe that your imprisonment made them safe are losing their grasp of reality. But these men are your brothers, your lost younger brothers. And if the word integration means anything, this is what it means, that we, with love, shall force our brothers to see themselves as they are, to cease fleeing from reality and begin to change it. For this is your home, my friend. Do not be driven from it. Great men have done great things here and will again, and we can make America what America must become. It will be hard, James, but you come from sturdy peasant stock, men who picked cotton and dammed rivers and built railroads, and in the teeth of the most terrifying odds, achieved an unassailable and monumental dignity. You come from a long line of great poets, some of the greatest poets since Homer. One of them said, "The very time I thought I was lost, my dungeon shook and my chains fell off." You know, and I know, that the country is celebrating 100 years of freedom, 100 years too soon. We cannot be free until they are free. God bless you, James, and Godspeed. Your uncle, James.